Hello and welcome to episode 6 of our tutorial series, where we'll be making a DirectX ready game engine. In this episode we're going to be focusing on creating ourselves a better GUI. We've created windows before, but these have always used the standard Windows theme, and that's rather boring. In today's episode we're going to be developing a fully customized and modern looking application window. This will give us the benefit of not only having a beautiful UI that we've created and built from scratch, but it will also teach us some more key Win32 fundamentals which will help us gain even more control over our system, and that is, after all, the main point. Now, we've got a lot to learn and not a lot of time to do it in, so let's get on with it. We start 2022 off with a new episode and a new IDE. This is going to be presented in the new Visual Studio Preview Edition 2022. The link will be in the description, so if you haven't upgraded, please go ahead and do so now. Now, first thing we want to do is just put into place some good practices. It's been a while since we've gone to this project, so let's just run this just to make sure it's working, and to see how it was operating when we left it last. There we go, we can see that our program is loading up properly. We've got our splash screen loading up, and we've got our logger with our mtail logging up also. That's wonderful, and that's time that we can move on. To start our journey into actually creating a game engine, what we're going to need is we're going to need a new window. And this is going to be a window to actually hold our simulation inside. Although we want to directly hold our simulation inside this, if we do want to make an editor with docking windows, etc., we're going to need multiple different windows to be able to create it for multiple different reasons. For example, a solution explorer or an error list. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, however, we just need a new window. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open our Olympus folder, and I'm going to come down to Source, and let's come to our Olympus core. If we come into Public, if we come down to Classes, we don't want that. Let's go into Engine. Let's go into Engine, much better. And let's come to Classes, and we can find our Simulation class. Now already our simulation class is inheriting off of our iApplication class. Our simulation is going to be basically the front end for our system. It's going to be basically ran off of lots of other different classes, but this is what's going to be on the front end. So I think it's fair that our simulation should have its own window. I could create a separate window inside of the simulation class, but what I actually want to do is I'm going to inherit simulation directly off of the window. So let's go public Win32 window. Perfect, and now our simulation class is a window in itself, and we can just run that. So let's just run that now. It's giving us an error saying it doesn't recognize the window. Now we've declared iApplication up here, but we haven't declared the window. To make this easier, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come into Core, I'm going to open Public, and I'm going to come to our Core minimal file. What I want to do is put the main files, the main header files of our platform features such as Win32, all in this core minimal, and it'll just make it easier for us to access later. So let's go ifdef Win32, and because it's an ifdef we need an endif, and let's just go include. Turn caps locks off, include platform Win32, and let's look at what we want to include here. So let's start off with our Win32 utils, because we want all of our Win32 files or classes to be able to access from that. Let's come in here and go include platform Win32, and I think the most logical next step would be to include our sub-object. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go through and include our window, and then I'm going to include our iApplication class. Now the specific order you put these classes in will mean the specific order of what they can draw from. So for example, by putting iApplication last, it means it can actually draw from Windows sub-object and Win32, whereas Window will only be able to draw from sub-object Win32, etc. And Win32 will not be able to draw from these forward. That's why putting these in the right order is really key. Now I've done that, if I come back to simulation, I can actually get rid of this here because I don't need it anymore. I've put it in our core minimal and it should be drawing from there absolutely fine. Let's just run that and see if we get the same error messages. Now we can see that we're not actually getting the same error messages here. We're actually saying here that we've got no default constructor available. Now that's because we are inheriting from Windows, but we are not actually invoking it. Similar to what we did with our splash screen. So let's come in here and let's open our splash screen. Let's come down to actual splash screen class here, and you can see that we've given the constructor details for our splash screen, but we haven't actually done that for our simulation class yet. So let's just copy and paste this for ease. Let's come into simulation. Let's right click here and go to definition. And we can see that here we have our constructor. So let's just paste in what we had before. Now this isn't called a splash screen, this is our main application class. So let's just go main application. Let's just copy and paste that in there like so. And we probably don't want our application to be 500 by 600, so let's make this 800 by 600. It's just a nice normal size to get. Obviously we can change all of these details after it's been invoked and give extra different features to it, different sizes, different names, etc. But this is just to get us started. Now that's done, let's just run that again. It's saying blank project cannot initiate instantiate the abstract class, and this is, if we come down to our splash screen, we can see here we have our message handler class, but we are not using that in our simulation. So let's just come down here and let's just add this one in as well. Now this is not splash window, this is going to be Olympus simulation message handler, and let's just invoke that in here. This is a virtual, and we need to override this from the master. Do we want all of this? No, we do not want any of this. Do we want any of this at all? No, we don't. So let's just put this like that, ready for use in a moment, but not actually being used right now. Let's just run this, and can we finally get ourselves a working project? Yes, we can. Now that's wonderful. Everything seems to be working wonderfully, but we haven't actually invoked or created our window. So let's do that now. Let's go to splash screen. And if we just come up to here to splash screen, you can see that we have ran these two classes to create our window. Let's go to simulation. Let's go to here. And we opened our splash screen, so it's a good time right here to now register our new class and initiate our window. Let's see if that now works. That should work absolutely fine, and I'm guessing one of the reasons that's not working is because we haven't actually changed anything in our blank project, and because I haven't hit rebuild solution, it's not picking up the new changes. So as a point of process, let's just test that. Now that's rebuilt in full, let's just run that again. And we can now see that our window is popping up, so that's rather annoying. That's really annoying that we have to do that every time. And once our engine gets to a point where there are hundreds of different files in here, and I hate to daunt to anyone, but that is going to happen, it's going to be harder and harder to rebuild the entire project from scratch. So there's a little fix to this. Let's just make a couple of changes here. All we need to do is take away this project name from here, template. So hit apply. Please make sure we're on all configurations for this, otherwise it won't change. And let's just get rid of our project name from here as well. Now we actually have a little extra macro in Olympus properties, which is custom build steps, build events, pre-build event, post-build event. It's on one of them. Let's have a look if it's actually on this one. There we go. This is our copy command. Don't need it anymore. Let's delete it. Okay, now if we build this now just from scratch, because the DLL is now going to be building in the exact same folder as the blank project, we don't need any copy overs anymore. It just makes it a lot easier to run with. That being said, we have a working window. Now let's have a look at this window and let's assess it. That is not a window, that is a grey square, and that is because it is taking all of the features of our splash screen that we set up just for our splash screen. So let's have a look to see how we could possibly change that. Let's click stop and let's come back in here and let's look at our platform, Win32. Let's come down to our private because I'm going to want this one, and I'm going to go to window. And let's have a look in here. Now we have WS underscore pop-up in here, and this is being used to create our window. You can see up here we've actually got WS overlapped window, so let's just try that one instead. That looks much better, but now it's also given a window to our splash screen. So what we really want is we want a way to be able to choose which one we're going to use. So let's close all this down. Let's remove that. And what we're going to do in a moment is we're going to look into how to do that. But one key-eyed viewer did mention to me that we actually haven't used half of these details here. So I am just going to, we could just use this one right here. And that just makes that a little bit nicer. Now, at the moment, we're running our window on a WS pop-up. And this one is saying WS overlapped window, and it's not adjusting it correctly. What we're going to do is we're going to make those tie up so that it's the same. And what a just window break does is if we say that we want our window 500 height, it will adjust that to add on the extra bit for the caption or for whatever WS overlapped window gives us. And that just allows us to do better painting, etc. later. At the moment that wasn't working because we have this one for WS overlapped window and this one for WS pop-up, but we're going to tie those together. At the end of the last section, I went around and I changed all of these to desktop, and I've just realised this was all wrong, so we're just going to go back. We're going to put that how it was originally. Now what I want to do is I first want to think about all the different type of windows that we want to be able to create. Okay, so let's just do something very simple here, and let's just go dword, and let's go style, and let's go equals WS pop-up. There we go. And then we can just go style and style. And this will just mean we've tied everything together into one variable. Let's just run this again quickly. And we'll see that now as we go through we won't need to keep on updating it up every time with the DLL or rebuilding the solution. We've got our WS pop-up window. This is great. This is for when we want a pop-up to appear. We've also got our WS overlapped, and this will give us a window. It won't actually give us any resizable, so this is a static window. We can move it around. We can't get it any bigger. If we double click it, it won't maximize, and as I say, we've got no resize, so let's just close that. So we've got WS overlapped, we can use that as a static. And if we just change this to WS size box, and we press here, we now have a resizable window. Now, you may notice that the X, the maximize and the minimize has gone from this. To get that, we need an overlapped window. Let's have a look here. Overlapped window. Excellent, so we're all ready and we've got our basic theme going. Now, if you're anything like me, you look at this window and you feel pain. And this is because I do not want my application to have this horrible white banner at the top. I want to be able to customize every element of my game engine. I don't want that to come up red. I don't want this to come up like this. And I don't particularly want that in that font. Let's put it right, I don't want any of this like it is. So let's change that. Let's come to close here, and I'm just going to put this back to a size. Better yet, let's go and build this in sensibly now. So let's come into our public here, and let's come to our Win32 utils, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new enum. And I'm going to say enum, and we're going to call this window type. And then I'm going to subclass that on dword because that was what our style was. And then we can create ourselves our different window types. So we can say we want a static window, and the static window is going to be equal to our WS overlapped. We want a resizable window, which is going to be equal to our WS size box, and we want a pop-up, which is going to be equal to our WS pop-up. We don't have to create this in this format, but it just makes it a little bit easier to just stay managed this way. We know exactly what we want and what ones we can use for our system. Let's just clean this up so it looks a little bit nicer. Perfect. And then if we come back down to our simulation, let's come back down to our window, in fact. You can see this is WS overlapped window here, and instead of this, what we can do is we can just go window type, static. We run this again. We'll see that we now have our static window coming up. We run it again with pop-up. We'll have our pop-up window. Now this is wonderful. Now we need a way to actually differentiate what window or what type we actually want specifically. So let's have a look. Let us come into our window class. We're already here. And let's have a look how we can make this a little bit nicer for us to use. Let's open up our classes and go to window.h. Now at the moment we've got a lot going on here to just initiate this with. Let's come into window.cpp and let's have a look at this. The first thing we need, let's get rid of class name in here. And let's just change that to title. Change that to title, and then what we can do is we can just use title for both of these. Title. There we go. Let's go into our Win32 and let's just create ourselves some defaults. So let's just say, let's put it up here. Let's just say define default width, and we say default width is going to be 600. Hashtag define # even default height. That one's going to be 600, and then width is going to be 800. So we have our default width and our default height. let's come back to our window, and let's just say our M width is going to be our default width, and our M height is going to be default height. What is going on here? I expect that's because I put these after it and that won't work. That means what we can do now is we can just take this off of our initialization. Now we've taken that out of our initialization. That's absolutely fine. That should work fine. Let's come into here. Let's change this around. Now we only need one of these left, and we don't need our size. Let's do the same for our splash screen, because that's also invoking that. So one of these, and we don't need our size, but we do want our size. So let's have a look at how we're going to do that. Let's come up to our window class and how we're defining this at the moment. At the moment we've got two integers and they are separate, but Windows actually gives us one a element called size. So let's just come m_size. I'm going to create some getters and setters for this. And just to get us in good form, this is how I'm going to start doing everything going forward. So let's put two publics in here so that we can just separate the getters from the setters. Let's do our getters first of all. We need size. We're called size. And we're just going to go return m_size. And then in our setters, we're going to go void size. And then we're going to input size and say size. We're not actually going to do, let's do it like this. Let's do this. So we're going to say m_size is equal to size. That's perfect, that will work, but I'm actually going to create a second one of these, and I'm going to go size, and I'm going to go int x, int, or let's just say int cx, and int cy. Why specifically this is cx and cy, I don't know, but that is what size defines itself as. Let's just go peak, it's cx and cy, so I don't know why that is, but that's what it is. And then we're just going to go m.size size.cx equals cx, and m_size.cy equals cy. That's perfect. Now let's come and have a look and see what our Windows class is doing and how it's using that. So let's come in here. We've got m_height. I'm actually going to get rid of these, like so. And let's have a look here. So let's just say m_size equals size and we're going to say default width, default height, and that should initialize that absolutely fine. This should be size.cx. This should be size.cy. Let's do the same down here as well. Width, height, and height. Now that should work absolutely fine. Let's just press play on that. m_height is undeclared. Let's have a look. So take that out of there like so, because we're going to reinitialize that. Now what we want to do is we just want to go size. Let's grab those numbers, 500, 600. We just want to put size in there. Size 500 by 600. And that should re-over initialize our startup size. There we go. And that should mean our splash screen now appears at 500 times 600. What have we got here? This should be size.cx. And let's just do our traditional width. Any more width in here? Let's do that one to just size.cy. And let's just hit play and see if this will now work. And that is working wonderfully, and our splash screen is all sized correctly, as is our main window. That is brilliant, and we've got our new features of being able to use just our size. Let's stop that. Now we've cleaned up the initializer for the constructor for our window, we can actually add in our new variable. So we're going to have a new variable, and this is going to be a window type. And we're just going to call this m_type. Let's put this in here like so, and let's call this window type. But what we're going to do is we're going to declare this as standard as a resizable window. Now, if we declare this inside the constructor in the header file, it means when we actually declare the window, we don't need to use it. But let's just add this into, we don't need to declare it when we were creating the class, more to the point. Let's add that into there, and let's just go m_type is equal to type. I wrote this to show how we can declare a new size variable by just using these brackets and including the data in here. But what we can actually do here is we can actually just go size and use our getter and setter from before. There we go, or our setter from before. Now we've done that, what we can do is we can come down to here. Instead of using style, we can just say m_type. And once again, m_type. Let's run that again. And we can now see that we've actually got a resizable window. Now this is a resizable window for both of these. We didn't want that. So let's come up to our splash screen, and what we should now be able to do is come into here and just put window type, pop up. Win32 window type, pop up. Let's hit play. And we can say this one is now coming up as a resizable window, whereas this one is a pop-up. We are succeeding. The next thing that we're going to want to do is actually paint the window. So again, let's just run this quickly. This is coming up in this lovely white, and how do we get rid of that? Let's come down to our window here and let's have a look. Now, on our simulation class here, we have got our message handler, and on our splash screen we'll have the message handler, and we've also got one in subobject called common message handler. But let's just have a look at how this works currently. Let's go to here, let's go and open our actual subobject header file, and we can see that we've got this message handler as =0 and it's virtual. That means its descendants must actually create this class. We also have the common message handler. Now this is getting confusing, so let's get rid of this one. Let's get rid of this one and just put this one as message handler in its own. And let's go to subobject and let's just put this one as the message handler. We're not using this at the moment, and I'm not 100% sure why we would use this, but it's good to just have it there. It's if we did need it in the future. And one of the benefits of what we can do now is if we come to our window, let's come up to our sub-object, let's grab this here, let's come to our window, let's put this in here, like such. Let's just create this. Come back to here, we can grab this, go to our window because we need to return an L result. There we go. But we don't want to really return the default window processing here. What we can actually do is we can go sub-object, because that's what this window is directly created off of, and we can just go message handler. Perfect. So now our window class has its own message handler. Now if we come back to our splash screen, we come down to here, we've got this return common message handler. Now that doesn't exist anymore. We don't want to define directly off of the sub-object anymore because this class is defined off of the window. So let's do that. Let's go window message handler, and let's just do the same for simulation. Window message handler. Now the way this will work is our simulation will get the messages first. It will go through all of the messages that it needs, and then it will hand that down to our window, which will then go through all the messages it needs, which will then hand it down to our sub-object, which will get all the messages it needs. This means we can tier and layer different messages depending on what we want. Now one thing from staring at this that is annoying me is that we've got a double namespace on all of this here. So I'm just going to change this to namespace Olympus. If I see it, I've got to fix it. That's just the way it goes, I'm afraid. And then we can just get rid of this Olympus. 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 Now let's come back to our windows.h or windows.cpp is the one we want. Just the same as any of these message handler, we need to create a switch case, and it's going to be based on our message. Now, Windows gives us lots of different messages that we can use to respond to how we want our window to operate. And these messages come in two main formats. They come in client messages and non-client messages. The client messages are the general high-level messages and for what you want to go inside the window. So if you want to create a button inside the window, or if you want to draw a picture inside the window, these are the type of things that the client messages will handle. If you want to do things with the caption, however, the actual frame of the window, the actual window itself instead of what's going inside it, then you need to edit the non-client window. There are a couple of functions that we can use to paint here. We've got wm_paint, and that will paint what is inside the window. So let's just first of all go case. Let's put double brackets there and go break. There's also another one which is a very similar format, and these you'll notice this. It just goes NC paint, standing for non-client paint. And let's just add this on here as well. Let's go break. To paint our window, we're going to need to use this WNC paint. This is going to paint the outside of the window. Let's have a look. Now, to be in good form, what we're going to do is we're going to start creating ourselves functions. So let's go void window on n non-client paint. And I happen to know that we are going to need a H region for this. So let's just go region. Now this function doesn't currently exist, so let's just create that. And let's just feed this in here. We are going to need to call this. Our H region is going to be as a H region, and it's going to be our W param. There we go. And we just need a semicolon on the end. And that means if our message receives is WNC paint, then we are going to call this function and we are going to feed in the W param, which is actually the region or the area for the non-client window. And now we have an area to paint with. Just like anything when we are painting with Win32, we're first going to need to get ourselves a HDC. The best way we can do that is like so. We've got our HDC here and is equal to getDCEX. We need the window handle, we'll fix that in a moment. We need the region that we want to paint, which is up here. That's why we're supplying that in. And these are the features that we're going to give it. I'm not going to go through every single one of these features. This is just represents that it's a DirectX window, which means it's an accelerated window. This is a function that makes it so that it cuts out the inside of the area, inside of the window. And this function, which is undefined, just gives us extra features. I'm not going to define it, but I am going to tell you it's needed. Now, this is not actually here right now, so I'm just going to paste that in. That is almost like a hidden command almost, that should be there or does need an include file, but I am not including it, so we're just going to include this in here like so. That is 3 zeros, 1 1 and 4 zeros on the end for anyone who's trying to get that in quickly. This should be our m_handle. This is our region. These three are all working. And the only last thing we should need here is a way to stop painting, because the only time that we paint in Win32, we also have to stop painting thereafter. So let's have a look. We need to release our DC as well. So basically all this means is start painting, end painting. All of this extra things on the end is just to define a couple of extra special ways that we want to paint. Now this handle is not working, so let's go and have a look to see what this is. If we go to sub-object, I've got that as get handle. I'm just going to put that as handle. Just like we did before, I'm going to make getters and setters for this stuff. I'm going to say void handle HWND, and we're going to say m_handle is equal to our HWND, so that we've got a way to set that if we need to. And that is actually going to be very important, because if we come up to here on our setup message handler, we're not actually defining our handle or our m_handle in here anyway. So what we should really do is we should really go handle, because we're using our setter right now. We're just going to use this PWND. We're just going to send that in as such. That should start working. Oh no, PWND dot handle. That's why that's not working. Send in a handle. I've done this wrong. PWND / handle is meant to be our HWND. There we go. So this is a dynamic pointer to every new window that we get, and when we create it, we need to take the handle of that window and we need to force it to this. That is why that is going on. And the reason we've done this is so that when we are calling it inside here technically, but I'm going to replace it here as well, it's already set up and ready to use. Now that's done, we should just be able to use our handle and we're ready to start painting. Now, to actually paint our window, we're going to need these functions here. So let's have a look to see what we're doing here. I'm just going to put an extra space so we can see what we're doing. First of all, we're going to just grab a a reference to the entire rectangle of the window, and this is again the outside of the window. We're using get window rect for the outside of the window. We would use get client rect for the inside of the window. We're doing that because every time it draws, every time we resize, that could resize. It's easier to just grab a reference right here and now. We're going to use this fill rect function to be able to fill a rectangle of a specific size, and that is going to be referenced off of the size that we just created. We need to fill in the HDC. This basically gives a reference to the window that we want to paint. We're using this H brush here, and we're going to create a solid brush, and we're going to need to delete that after we've created it, otherwise we're just going to be creating excess memory, and that's not good. Now we've put that in, that should work absolutely fine. So let's just play this here, and let's see what we're getting. There's a few errors here. This is in our splash screen. It's because I've changed our handle. Is that the same? No, it's not. We've got twice there. 80 and 26. I think we covered both of those. There we go. Let's run that again. Now, the reason that is not working is actually because of this here on non-client paint. We actually need to return false on this. So return false on that as such, and let's just press play. That's better. It's a little bit better. It's not exactly what we were looking for, but we can see that this is definitely working. Now, why does it look like this? Now, the reason it looks like this is because it actually did create the window absolutely fine, and it looked wonderful. But then it recreated it again, and we actually don't repaint the window multiple times. So that's what we're going to need to do. Let's have a look at how we would do that. Let's go stop here. Let's get rid of this WM paint for right now because we don't need that. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create a timer. Let's come in here. Let's go case WMNC create. And let's just create ourselves. Now we're going to say on non-client create. Don't think we're going to add anything in there. And we're going to say on this one we're going to say return true. Now it can be difficult to understand exactly which one of these we need to keep on adding in. Is it return true? Is it return false? Is it break? Only thing I can say to you is you either take my word for the specific arguments or just have a look on the Microsoft documentation. There's always a return section and it will tell you exactly what you need to put. I'm just going to clean this up slightly. Now our on non-client create doesn't actually exist. Now put that above because that will call before our on NC paint. Let's go void window and non-client paint, and let's pull this off in here. Let's create that. Oh no, that one's meant to be on non-client create. There we go. Now what we want to do is we want to set timer, and we're just going to say, let me have a look. We're just going to say that we want to set the handle for this. We're just going to set the event ID as 1. We can set it as anything, we're just going to set it as 1. And we're going to set a time for our timer to elapse. Now this is generally going to elapse in milliseconds, that's 1,000 to every second. If we were to update our UI 1,000 frames a second, I think it would start to suffer slightly, so let's just start with 100 frames for a second. The last feature is just anything that we would need to, any flags that we want to give it, and right now we don't want to give it any flags. So again, when the window is created, we will run the onNonClient create function, which will set a timer. Now, our timer is going to be another one of these. So let's go case WM timer. And what we want to do is we want to go return. Let me have a look, see what timer needs. Timer can just be break. As I say, it can get very confusing. You just either know with these on the return type, or you have to look it up, and that really is just how it is. Now on our timer, what we want to do is we want to redraw our window. So let's create a new function in here. And let's just call this redraw window. Just going to create that in there. Now what this does is, this huge great long function here is basically refresh window. It means many things, and it is used for setting the position of the window, moving the window, resizing the window, refreshing the window. It's used for many things, but this huge great long function here just basically means reset window. Reset window is wonderful, but once we actually get into painting what's inside the window, it doesn't actually repaint what's inside the window properly. So we're going to add in the WM paint function, and we're going to send that message so that it will call out WM underscore paint function. Now we've done that, let's just put this into here like so. And let's put that in there. We're going to need the colon there. And let's put break, and let's test this again to see if we can get our window working now. It's actually getting an error message here. That is because we have another function here called redraw window. Let's have a look, see where that is located. Is that in splash screen itself? Where was this original one we located? Never mind, let's just go into splash screen and let's just clear that out like that. That should work absolutely fine. So let's play again. Now we can see as we're moving around that is still painting, and I've just realized what the problem is. So let's come to our window and let's come to on non-client paint. This rectangle here is actually giving us the coordinates of the rectangle or the window. So if we can imagine that was in the middle of the screen, the top left hand corner would not be 0. But when we're painting, we need to do it from 0 to the top left. So what we need to do is we need to take the window height and put that in functions that this rect here can understand, because at this moment here this is trying to paint at, for example, 200, 300, etc., where it should be starting at 0. So let's do that. So what we need is we need a new rect here. We need the one above, but we need this one as well. So let's go rect. Let's go size equals size. Let's just go. Let's put a little comma in here. We want rect dot right minus rect.left. That'll get us to the width. And let's go rect.bottom minus rect.top, and that'll get us the width. So that's the size of our box. Now let's create a new rectangle here. Let's go LP rect. And we can go 0, 0, size.cx, size.cy. Let's go. LP rect. No, don't want to work like that. No, let's do this the old-fashioned way then. Let's go rect. New rect is equal to rect. Take all those coordinates straight out of there. And let's just go new rect. If we now run this again, we can now see our window is painting correctly, and this was just because we weren't converting from screen space into window space into homogeneous space, etc, etc. But we can now see everything seems to be rendering absolutely fine. Let's have a look. Now let's try and change this around. Now this is at 46, 46, 46. What's our background at? Let's have a look at sub-objects. That's at 46, 46 as well. So let's change that to 36, 36, 36. That means the inside window will be darker than the outside window. There we go. Now we could keep this like this, where it's got the rounded top, but I don't really like that, and that's actually because it's taking off of a different theme. So let's get rid of the Windows theme on this. Let's come down to our on NC Create. And let's use this function. Right, where's our NC Create? Let's use this function right here. And this is set Windows theme. We're going to supply the handle for the window that we want, and we're going to supply it nothing. We're basically going to reset the Windows theme. Now to be able to use this, let's come into here. We are going to need to include uxtheme.h. And if we're going to include ustheme.h, we are also going to need to include the import for that, which is going to be this pragma comment. Because it's a .lib, we need to actually import that .lib. Now let's just throw this in window instead. Let's not accidentally delete it. Let's throw it in Windows. And that way anything that is defining from Windows will also get the benefits of having that. And then if we come to down here, we can see set Windows theme. So let's run that again. Let's wait for that to load up. And we can see now that all of that rounding on the box has now gone away, and we've got a quite nice looking box to play with. Now, on a normal window, you would see that this type of thing would not happen. Now what we can do is we can create what is called a swap chain. Basically, what a swap chain means is that instead of painting to the window that is showing in front of us now, we will create a separate window, a second window behind our window, and we will paint to that window. And then when we finish painting, we'll just swap the windows over. If we do this every scene, it just means we're always painting to the back window, and showing the front window and swapping, and this is why it's called a swap chain. We just swap the windows over and over again. The reason it's doing this is because we can see it trying to paint. Now, we can change that. To do this, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to add a couple of extra functions to the beginning and end of this function. So this was our original start painting, start drawing, and we are just going to add in these. What I'm going to do is we need these 3 lines here before calling this. And that is because we need this width and this height. So let's just set that quickly. That's going to be size.cx and size.cy. Right, so what this is doing, this is creating a H bitmap. This is our background window, and we are going to create a compatible bitmap based on the original window and the size of that original window. What we're then going to do is we're going to make a reference of that on our H old, and we are going to use select object to actually bring this one to the front, so that this one is freed up. We're then going to paint to that window, and then we are going to swap it back. And to swap it back, we just need to do this. Add that in there. Again, we're going to need these 2 here. If we do this and we hit play, and we tick off and on and off and on and off. Now that is still doing that. Let's try a different thing, see if we can get rid of that. Let's add our activate tool, because we're going to need this afterwards, and this may have an effect over it. So WM_NC activate. And for this one, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new function. This one's an on, non-client, activate, just to say match the same exact format as all the other ones. But what we want for this one is we are going to need a bool parameter, and we want to know if this window is activated or if it's not activated, if we clicked on it or if we clicked off of it. And to get this, what we need is we need the low word of the W param. The W param can be split into low words and high words, sort of 2 different numbers, and this just means the W param is being fed with a number on the low word version. And we're going to say if this is not equal to WA inactive, WA inactive means the window is not active. If it's not equal to WA inactive, that would mean it would be true, and false, and that will get us exactly what we need. So there we go. Now I appreciate I did a lot of talking there, so let's make this a little bit easier. Let's just put this on here. NC create, that one should go here. On NC active or on non-client active, we are going to declare a bool. As I say, if it's WA inactive, it's going to come out false. If it's WA inactive, or if it's that one's false, it's going to come out true. So if it's active, then what we've got here is we've got a new feature. I'm just going to call this M_active. Let's create this one. And let's come down to here and let's create a bool to say whether or not the window is active. So is the window selected, is it focused, or is it not? Let's come to here, M_active. And the return type for active is true. So we need to return true on that. That's messed up my spacing slightly, so let's just fix that again. I really like these things just really nice and easy to read, so that you can just read it in a list without everything being jumbled up. That one is returning true. Let's try this one more time. And now if we click on and off of the window, it is not suffering with the problems. And if we come round here, we can notice we can redraw this and everything is working absolutely fine. It's a little bit slow. You could speed that up if you wanted to, but I'm sure you would have more problems than good. I think that is good enough. And I think if you were to do that with Visual Studio, you'd also find there is a little bit of clipping when you do this as well. The only other difference here that I would like to do now is if I click on this window on and off, I would like to show some sort of feature to show whether this window was focused or not. So now we've actually created and defined whether our window is active or not, we can respond to that. So let's come down back to our on non-client paint and let's come back to here. So all of this feature is from the beginning. All of that feature is from the end, all of that feature is from the beginning, so we've just got this here. Let's create a new brush, and let's call this, say 10, 150, 100, and that should give us a nice azure blue. Let's just put that brush, we've already defined that in there once, so we don't need to define that again. Put the delete brush underneath that and let's create a new function. So let's say if what we want to do is if active do this, but instead of saying fill rect we're going to say fill frame. Draw frame. Draw frame. Let's have a look. What have we got? Let's go and find that. The correct one is called frame rect. So let's have a look at this. Frame rect. There we go. Exactly the same, and we are calling it here. We don't have our active symbol here, so let's just come back to here. Let's be good and let's put it without getters and setters. And let's say ball active, return m_active, and let's just set that as well, void active ball active, and then obviously we're just going to put our setter in there. There we go. That is set away like so. We can come back to here. Let's come back to here because what we can now do is we can just put active, just to get into good form of using our getters and setters inside our classes as well. If is active, put a border around. If it's not, don't put a border around. Let's see how this is looking. We now have this wonderful green border in there. I think I got my numbers mixed up as always. But we can now see that we have a highlighted window, which is wonderful. Let's try this the other way around. Let's try 100, 150. And that is much better. Now you can make your border sign any type you want. You can draw any region you want. I was considering making this part orange and this part in black, just to match the theme of the show, but it looked horrible, so I'm not doing that. There is one last thing that I would like to add just before we move on to the next section, and that is all good windows should have a drop shadow. So let's have a look at adding a couple of little extra features into our Win32 utils that will just do us some benefits. So let's have a look. What have we got here? we come into Win32 Utils, we can add these functions here. Now, I don't expect you to try and copy all of these down, and I'm not going to explain them all, so you can just grab this from the GitHub. These are all to check and modify the Windows style. So this one modifies a Windows style, this one modifies a Windows EX style, this one is a has style, and this one is a modify class style. What we can now do with this is, if we come into our window and we come back up to our on NC Create, we can use this new feature. Let's just add this in here. So we are now saying Win32 Utils modify class style, and we have now got a CS or a class style drop shadow. So let's run our program one more. There we go, and we have got a drop shadow. It's a little bit difficult to see, but it is definitely there. It's probably a little bit easier to see here on the left hand side. Now, as you can see, we've gone off the window, and this is doing the, this is really because we haven't handled our WM paint message yet. If we do that, then we can stop that from happening, but we're just not repainting the window when it goes out of view, so that's why it's disappearing, but it is definitely there. When we click the window, it's highlighted. We've got a basic outside window color. We've got our basic inside window color. And I think that is a good start. Going into this next section, let's just close everything down and clean everything up a little bit before we move on. Let's just close all of this down like so, and this down like so. Let's go back to our platform and our window. So I'm going to open window.cpp and window.h. At the moment we're using our window on paint NC non-client paint to paint our window, and it looks good. It is looking good. But we are missing a few features of a window, such as the title up here, the buttons, etc. And if we wanted to put an icon in. Let's close that down and let's see what we can do. To create the details of our caption, I could create everything directly inside our window class, but it would make it slightly more confusing. So what I want to do is I want to create a new class. So let's come up to Olympus, click on Show All Files, and let's click on Show All Files. Here we go. Come to Source, come to Win32, and let's just go Add Class, and that can be, going to call this W32 Caption. And that's because at the end of this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around and change all of these file names to include W32 at the beginning. It will just make it easier for when we're creating multiple different file names with roughly the same names. Let's just grab our W32 caption and let's put that in here like so. And let's come back out of here and let's come back and see, can we find this in here? Let's whack that in private and let's just whack that in classes. First thing I want to do is just change the namespace of this. There we go. And let's come to our core minimal and let's just put that in there so everyone can access it. That's going to be include platform Win32 W32 caption, and we actually want that above Windows so that Windows can actually access it. Now we're still going to make most of our functions inside our Windows class, but we're just going to keep our W32 caption as more a storage class for the different details. Let's have a look and see what I mean by this. So let's have a look and let's say, let's create a private variable and I am going to call this, so it's going to be a ball, and we're going to say m_show title. Let's create our getters and setters as well. That's too public there. Ball, show title, return m_show title. Thank you, Visual Studio. Show title. And then the other one's going to be a void, so let's just do this one correctly as well. We all know how this works by now. There we go. And we just need to create our ball in here as well. And let's say show. Now, as standard, what I want to do is I want to show this title as standard for all windows. So let's put show title is equal to true. Without coming to our window, let's come to, this is our on non-client pane, and just underneath this, let's create ourselves a new function. We're going to call this void window paint caption. There we go. And if we come back into our window class, what we can do is we can now actually subclass off of our caption class. So let's say public Win32 caption. That's in there like that, and that means we can now use the variables that we're creating here. Let's come into here as such. Let's create this paint caption. We are going to need to call this down here. Now, what did we say before? This is our start draw section. This is our draw section, and this down here is our end draw section. The delete object function is just our final call, so we'll just put that one at the bottom, and then we're going to come in here and we'll go paint caption. Now, one thing I do recognize is we are actually going to need this HDC variable to be able to make that work. So let's just put that in here, HDC. Let's put it in here as well, paint caption, HDC. And now we can make a little check. If we say if show title, we can now paint our title. To make that work, let's use this section of text here. Now, I've made this in advance just so that I didn't have to type it all out. This section here is copied directly from above, and that will just get us the window rectangle and our size with our height and our width. What I've done here is I've just refactored that rectangle to take from 0 to 0 on the top left. The width is going to be the entire width of the window, but the height is only going to be 30, and that should give us the width of our caption. The next thing I've done is I've just used drawn text just to paint to this window using the HDC, and then we're taking our title and our title length to take the text, and we're just drawing into this rect. This at the end basically means that instead of placing the text on the left, is going to place the text in the center, which I think looks a lot nicer. Let's play that and have a look at what that looks like now. That is working, and it's now putting our Windows title at the top of the screen. We may remember that we called this one main application. Maybe we could change that to make it look a little bit nicer. Now, that is working, but that's not exactly how we want it. So what we need is a way to probably get rid of the white background and to change the font color. So we can actually do that like so. If we just use these two functions, this will work. So we're just going to set the background mode of the text to transparent. So that should wipe out the white background. For set text color, what we're going to use is we're going to just set the text color on this window, and then we're going to use our new active command. Is the window active or not? And using this type of command inside here is just a really quick way to say if or. So we say if it's active, we're going to want our text color to come up in white. But if it's not active, we want our text color to come up in a darkish grey. Let's have a look and see what that looks like. Let's just stop that and let's just run that again. That's a lot nicer to look at now, and if we click off the window, it's going to mute. That's looking a lot nicer. The next thing I want to do is just start having a look at our close button and how we're going to get that to show. So for now, I've just thrown this together, and this will just get us what we need to just get a mock view of what we need together. We're going to need a new text element, and that one is going to just be an X. We're going to need to define how wide we want our button to be. I have redefined our rectangle here to say that we want our button rectangle to go from the end of the page minus the button width. That should give us a good start place, and to the end of the page. That will just take up the last 50 of the page, and then obviously we've got 0 and 30 to just give us our caption. I then just use that to draw that into this information. Let's have a look. That's good, and we also get the benefit that if we are active, it comes up in white. If we're not, it comes up in dark. So that's a good start, but it's not really how we want to do it on a larger level. What we really should have is, if we come into our caption, we really should have a structure in here in which we can keep this information, because we may need it later. So let's have a look in here. Let's say we need a struct, and that struct is going to be called caption button. All I'm going to do is coming back into Windows to CPP and just grab this information right here. This is what we're going to need to be able to make our button work. We're going to need the text. We're going to need the button width. And we're going to need the rect that it's going to sit in. So let's just put this information in here. Rect us, and we'll just call this rect. Because we are in a struct, it's a good idea to just call all of these things with a capital at the beginning. It just lets us know that with the struct, everything is always public. Now with this here, you can see that generally my preference is that I like to use these capital variable names. I've put this one in here as a small case, and it really doesn't matter if we put that as a large case or a small case. That's great, we put that as an int. But this one, where it is a W string, can't really put that in capitals. It doesn't really work. So let's have a look at a way we can change this quickly. Let's come up to our core definitions file. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go type def, standard W string, and then I'm just going to call this W string. Let's just put that in there as such. If I then come back to our Windows caption, I should then be able to just change this to operate as a W string. We've just created ourselves a new variable listing in a really nice and easy way by just declaring it like such. Now, as we've done this, we might as well do it with string as well. There we go, we have a variable for our W string and a variable for our string. As we go forward, we may be creating ourselves new variable types just to make this nice and easy. And as we've done that, we can pretty much just go Control Paste and change all of these into W strings. Let's have a look. That should now work across the board. Now I'm doing that like this on purpose, just to see if there's anything. Core definitions is definitely being called first, so there's nothing on after this that should have a problem reading from it. Let's just go save all. Let's come back down to our, because I've done this, it's opened lots of extra files that we didn't actually want in the first place. Let's close all of these down. Command line arguments, there's our core definitions file. Now, because we've done that, it's actually changed this one as well. So we just need a standard W string, and that should define everything correctly. That one's in there like so. And this is now drawing incorrectly. Now, we haven't actually changed anything on our program, so let's just have a look and let's just see if this will run. WSS unidentified. Where we have used a W string stream on here, we are going to need to just put this back. So that should be, let's just put that as standard W string stream. Have a look, see anywhere else that we're having this problem. And that is working absolutely fine. And I think from just looking here, you can see that looks a lot better. We really can understand what's going on. Now that's working, what we really need to do is we really need to find a way to take this and turn it into this. Now we could declare this here, right here and now. However, this is on our paint caption, and this goes on over and over and over again. So what we probably want to do, we probably actually want to create our caption buttons up here on NC Create. We're going to want to create all of our button types in here, but I think the best way we can do this is if we come back into a W32 caption, let's create ourselves a list, just so that we can use that and add to it. That means we should be able to, on a more fundamental level, just add extra buttons if we ever needed them in the future. So standard list, I don't think we've included standard list, and that's the reason it's giving us a little bit of grief there. Caption button, and we'll just call this m_caption buttons. That is going to be one of our private variables, so let's just put that under there. And let's open our Olympus.h, just so that we are using list in both. Platform, engine, there's our PCH files, it's right there. And let's add in our include list. There we go. If we now come back to our W32 caption, our list option is now working fine. How do we now use this? So let's add a new function here, and let's say public, and let's say void add caption button. And let's just put a caption button here as our entry. And let's build that. As we've just created that straight into our W32 caption CPP file, it's not abiding by our namespace rules. So let's go and fix that quickly. Let's just add our namespace Win32. And let's get rid of here. Now the final action we're going to want to take here is going to be what m_caption buttons dot pushback button. There we go. That's going to actually draw all of those into our new list variable. The next thing we want to do is actually declare those. So let's come back into our window, come into here, and let's use this new function. So let's say Win32 caption. And let's say add caption button. Now this is a pointer, so all we're going to need to do is say new caption button, and that should work absolutely fine. Now it's saying that caption button is inaccessible, so let's go and have a look into that quickly. This is a struct and it is not public. And one thing that we've got here is that we haven't actually declared itself here. So let's go caption button. And let's make our constructor. Now I don't actually want to declare the rect originally, because we'll work that out as we're going along, but what I do want to declare is the text. So let's say wstring text, and what we do want is the width. So let's say int width. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this as standard 50, as we do, and that way I don't actually need to declare it. Let's say text is equal to text, and width is equal to width. Need to change that into a lowercase, otherwise we won't understand what we're talking about. Perfect, and now we have our caption button. So let's come into here and let's have a look at how we can now create, come into here, and let's have a look now how we can create this. So we've got our X there, and we want it to be 50, so we don't actually need to put that in. If we come back down now to our on-client paint, or more to the point onto our paint caption, we can have a look at this and how it is doing. So we can actually run a for loop over this, and we can say for auto button in, and what we're going to do is we're just going to make sure that we use an actual memory pointer to that actual piece of memory. We're going to say auto button is equal to caption dot caption buttons. Now we haven't actually created this function, so let's go and create that now. Just put the little brackets in there. Go to W32 caption, and this is just going to be one of our getters and setters. So we're not actually going to make a setter for this, so we can just create a setter, a getter. Let's just put that in there, and let's just put that like so, and then we're just going to say return m_caption buttons. That will get us everything that we need to be able to access that in our window. The next thing we want to do is just put this in here like so. We're not going to need this anymore. What we need is our button width. So that is going to be button width. This is going to be our button text. Button text dot C string. If we run this now, let's have a look. Now we're getting an error message in here saying that list is not a member of standard, but if we look on the right hand side here, this isn't actually coming from our Olympus program, this is coming from blank projects. Now the reason for this is we've included the list inside our Olympus.h, but our blank project doesn't actually draw from Olympus.h. So let's come into our source, let's come to our blank project, and let's just add that in here as well. So say list. Let's save that off and let's just run that again. There we go, that's all working perfectly, and we can now see we've got our button is working up there as well. Perfect. The next thing that we're logically going to want to do is create ourselves more buttons. So let's have a look into this. Come back up to add caption buttons and let's add ourselves to more of these. Let's come down to here. There we go. Let's have a look at the specific features that we want on there. So we want ourselves a maximize button, and that's going to be this one here. Now we want ourselves a lowercase symbol, so that is going to be this one here. This is not really technically a lowercase symbol, this is the actual symbol for minimize, as this is the actual box symbol for maximize. So if you try and use an underspace, it's not going to look exactly the same as this. Again, you can grab these exact icons or these exact file types from the GitHub. Let's just run that again and see what that looks like now. That is good, but as we can see, all of our fonts are coming up in the same place. So let's have a look to see how we can change this. Let's come back down to our caption buttons. Now at the moment we're using our rect that we created earlier, but let's just change that, and let's change that to our button rect. Let's just say button rect is equal to. Let's do that. That will help us just to keep a track of what our rect is for future operations. Now at the moment we're putting everything on size plus CS minus button width, but really what we want is 50 for the first one and 100 for the second one and 150 for the next one. So what we can do is we can say int space, let's say int offset is equal to, let's just keep that equal for now. And let's put in here, let's say int spacing is equal to 0. Now on the first one, we want our spacing to be equal to button width, and we want this one to be -0. So let's have a look. So this one should be button width. So our offset should be let's declare this up here. How do we want to do this? So button width, this one needs to go to 50, then 150. So let's say, let's create this up here, and let's say spacing plus equals button width. There we go. And this one is now going to be our spacing. This one, we're going to need it to remain as 0. So let's try this. We can now see that these are coming up across, but that's not actually in the correct place because these should have much more of a distance from it. And that's because we're not actually changing this. Let's change this to offset, as I said originally. In fact, let's not do that. Let's go spacing minus or plus button width. Change this back to spacing while we're just trying to get this to work. That doesn't seem to be working at all. Back to spacing. This one. Let's try this. Spacing plus equals button width, that there. Let's say minus spacing plus button width. Now I should expect that should work. It probably won't be the prettiest function in the world, but it will work, and all of these are now positioned in the correct places. And more importantly, we're now feeding this information into our actual structure, which means we should be able to then draw that for our button clicks. Off screen, I've just gone through and closed all of the extra windows we're using because unfortunately I had a problem with my microphone and we was not recording. So I've just had to go back a moment. I apologise for the disruption in continuity. We have just added our buttons in there and they are appearing lovely now, but we want a way to be able to tell if these buttons are actually being highlighted or not. And what we're going to need for that is we're going to need to figure out exactly where on our page our mouse is, and is that mouse over our button. And then if it is, we can use a function to just paint that mouse button in. So let's try that. First of all, let's go point, takes caps lock off, point, and let's go get cursor pos, PT. That's going to get a XY coordinate now of where exactly our cursor is on the screen. Let's go rect, and let's go get window rect. And now we're going to suffer the exact same problem as we had before. Our buttons are taking the top left of the window, and we are taking the get cursor position from the top left of the screen. So we're going to need to put those so that they match, and that's really easy. All we need to do is point.x is minus rect.left, and point.y minus, and what I'm going to do is minus equal rect.right. minus equals rect.right. Perfect. And then we can do a little bit of a calculation here. So we can say if button rect.left is smaller than point.x and button .rect.right, this is going to be a long one, so bear with me, .rect.right is bigger than point.x, that means it's definitely in between on an x radius. And as we say, button.rect.top is smaller than point.y, and button.rect.bottom is bigger than point.y. That is a really long if case check, but that now does mean that if we're in there, then we should be able to do something in here. And to do that, let's just go fill rect. Let's go HDC, say button.rect, and then we need a brush. So let's just grab ourselves a brush. Do I have one here to hand? Yep, there we go. That one will do fine. And let's just change this to 92. And let's just paint that in there. And what we can say is brush. This one needs to be a memory pointer, so let's just do that. And because we're creating a brush, what we do need to do is we do need to do delete object brush. Now that that's done, let's play that and let's have a look. Now we're getting a few errors. Apparently this rect is a redefinition, so let's just get rid of that. Try this again. Now this does not appear to be specifically working as I was expecting. I have noticed here that I've put this as rect.right, so let's just put that rect.top and let's just try that again. If we come up here now, we can see that these are highlighting beautifully. That is a really good step, but at the moment we're not able to click on them, so let's change that. Let's come up to our messaging list again, and we need to add a new one in here for our non-client. That's case WM NCL button down. Let's just do a break on that one. Fix this up a bit and we'll just say on non-client left mouse button down. On non-client left mouse button down. It'll do. It's a really long and obnoxious title, but it will do. And we just need this on here. And let's go down below and let's actually create that. So we need to come to here. And we need to say void window. Put that in there like so, and let's create that. I think I probably made that one off screen. Now let's come and have a look to see what we've got here. So let's grab all of this and let's copy and paste that down into here. So when we left click down, what we're going to do is we're going to grab the cursor pointer, we're going to grab the handle for the window. We're going to minus the top left of the window from the actual rect, so that from the point, so that we can get inside the window. We are going to run against all of our caption buttons, and then we are going to skip all of this because we do not want to realign the button at this stage, and we don't really want to draw text, and we don't really want to colour anything in. But what we do want is we do want to say if it clicks, we're inside the button, then we want to do something. So let's just try something. Let's go send message. This handle, say WM close, and we'll just go 0, 0. This means if we click on one of these buttons now, it should close the window. So let's try this now. Now we have our application, we click on the button and it closes the window. So that really is working wonderfully. The next thing we want to do is find a way that we can actually differentiate what buttons do what. So let's come into our W32 caption and let's add ourselves a new function in here. I'm going to put this one above width and let's go int command. I'm going to initialize this one as -1. Let's get that one as nothing and let's get that one as 50. That's fine. And then let's put ourselves some definitions up here. So let's put our define CB underscore close and let's define that as 0. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy and paste this a couple more times so we can have CB close minimize and CB close maximize. 1, 2, done. Let's put our command in here, int command, so that we can actually feed it in, and then command is going to be our command. That's a capital there, let's change that. And then let's come back into our window class. Now we created these variables up on non-client create and they're up here. So let's put this, our new variables in here. That should be CB underscore close, CB underscore maximize, and CB underscore minimize. Right, I put that in the wrong place. Try this one again. There we go. And now all of our buttons have actually got a different function depending on what they do. So if we come back down to our caption buttons here, we can just make a switch case. We can say button.command. If we have case of CB underscore close, then obviously what we want to do is run our close message. And break. If we want a CB underscore minimize, we want to send message. No, we don't. We want to show window and all, and then we are going to do SW underscore minimize. There we go. Let's close that off and break. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy and paste this one to here. Maximize, maximize, maximize. Perfect. Let's try this all out now that we think it should be working. Now this is giving us some grief. Can we figure out why that is? I think it's because we don't have one of these here. Let's try that again now. And let's come up here. We can select our buttons and let's try them. Let's left click there. And that minimizes our window. Maximizes our window. Now I've just clicked that button once and it's not working. What we'd have to do is we'd have to double click that to make that work. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at our maximize feature in a moment. And we just need to click X and it closes our window for good. That is brilliant and we are ready to move forward. Now for speed, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab these functions and I'm going to paste them into our solution. Let's have a look. Where are we at? Let's close that down because for some reason this is coming. close that one down as well. Now I've finished the battle with the windows. Let's have a look. This goes to Win32 Utils. And I'm just going to paste in these extra couple of functions. This is a ball function to tell if our window is active, if full screen, and this is a inline void function to actually maximize our window. Let's start with this one here. Window placement will actually tell us if our window is maximized or not. So we're basically saying if the window is maximized, maximize. If it's not, don't maximize. It's a really nice and easy way to do that. And then we can do this again. We'll grab the window placement. It will tell us if the window placement is equal to maximized, and if it is, it will return for us. Let's go back to our window class now, and what we can just do is we can couple here on our maximize. We can just go Win32 Utils maximize window. We just need to bring in the handle for that, and then when we run this again, we should have a window that actually maximizes nice and easily without that having need to actually put a double click. Now one problem we're having here is that it's not actually accepting the size of my taskbar on maximize. I have my taskbar at the top, as some of you may have noticed, and this is actually cutting this off so I can see it and you can't. What we need to do is we need to recognize exactly where in the window or on the screen we can render to and where we can't render to. So there's actually a message for that, and it is called the minimum maximum. Let's just grab an example of what we're going to do here. Let's come all the way down to the bottom, and let's just copy and paste in a new function. This is going to be our on get minimum and maximum info. Let's just create that in there. We're going to give a min maximum info, which is going to be supplied by the system. When we are done that, what we're going to do is we are going to use our system parameters info to get the work area, and that will tell us the overall screen size that we've got in front of us. What we can then do is set the maximum size, the maximum position, and the minimum size of the window. So the maximum size will be the work area, not including the taskbar. The max position will be the work area top left and top. That means we will not be able to push this window anything onto the taskbar. And then we just set a minimum size for our window. So let's actually inactivate that now, and we can do that as such. Let's come up here. Now this is not a non-client window task, this is just a normal task, so let's just put that in there. That's not the one I was looking for. This here is the actual one I was looking for. That's perfect. Now if we close this and we run it again, at this stage we've been doing this for a very long time and everything is getting very messy. I'm going to go through and format everything before we get it up to the GitHub, but I'm just trying to get through this as quickly as possible so that we can all go and have dinner. If I maximize this now, it is only going to go to the maximum available view size of the window, which is absolutely amazing. When we maximize this square in here is not changing, just the same as if we do this, it's not changing. And that is just because we haven't actually overridden our WM Paint message currently. We'll do that in a moment. Let's just close that window just because we can. The next thing I want to do is just come and have a look at our on non-client paint message. At the moment we've got this, is if it is active, we want to put a frame around it. But we don't actually want to put a frame around it if the window is also full size. So let's go and is not Win32 Utils is full screen window, and then let's just put a handle in there. So when it is full screen, we don't want to put the border around, but when it's not full screen, we do want to put the border. So there's our pretty border. Let's just do that, and you'll see that we've lost our border, which is great. We'll put it back and we've got it again. We'll take it down, and we haven't. Now one thing you may notice here is that this has not changed when we're maximizing. So let's have a look into that. That should actually be doing so. Let's come to our caption button and let's just run a quick little check here. So if button.text.compare is equal to 0, let's come up here and let's grab this. It's equal to that should be a capital. Button.text.compare, that was correct in the first place. Let's put that in. Is equal to 0, that means it's worked. And Win32 utils is window full screen. Let's put the handle here. So let's again, if the maximize button, if this is the maximize button and the window is full screen, then we should change the text. It's equal to this little fellow right here. So there we go. That should work absolutely fine. I think there's probably needs to be another one of these here. But on the same regard, let's just say else if, and let's just copy and paste all of this. But we say if this is not full screen, and this one is showing, then it needs to be this one. Let's try that again now. So here we've got our square box, and we maximize it, and we've got our maximize size. Let's bring it down, and we've got our square box again. So that's good, that's working, and that's working nicely. Now, one of the things you may have seen me doing is I keep on double clicking on here to make this maximized, and it doesn't appear to be working. So let's just come up here and let's put that in. So let's say case WM NCL L double click. Is that right? Let's do this with a prompt. WM underscore NCL button double click. Break on the end of that. And let's just go maximize. So Win32 utils maximize window handle. And let's close that off. That one's got a bit of an error there. That should be working absolutely fine. Let's try this again. Let's run that. Let's double click that. Now that's having a few issues. Let me have a look and see if I can figure out why that is. I think the biggest problem here is probably that I just need to return 0 on that. Let's try this again. There we go, and that is working absolutely fine. So this is starting to turn into a really good, modern and nicely working program. There is one other feature that I like to add, is if you put this up like here, it should maximize. So let's do that now. What we want to do is we want to override another message, and this one's going to come down here because this one is not a non-client message. This is case WM on exit size. Exit size move. Exit size move. Let's just create all of this, and let's create ourselves a new function. So let's call this one on exit size move. Come all the way down to the bottom here. And just go void window on exit size move. Let's create this. And let's go down. Let's have a look here, because what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paste this one in as well. Just try and save us as much time as possible at this stage. What this one is going to do is on exit size move, we're going to get the window rectangle. We're also going to get the rectangle for the screen. We're going to work out is if our window rectangle is within the top 10 pixels of the screen area, not including the taskbar, which is very important, we're going to put our window full screen, but only if it's not already full screen. So Windows Utils is Windows full screen, and let's just put this one in here. Windows Utils maximize window. Let's come up here just to make sure that one went through correctly as well. On exit size move, let's bring our window all the way to the top of the screen, and we go maximized, and we do this and it's maximized. Perfect, that seems to be working brilliantly. The only thing I want to do quickly before we move on and call this wraps for the day, let's go wm_paint. And what we just need to do is we just need to override our on paint message, just so that if we are wanting to see the inside of the window working lovely now, then we can just do that. So void window on paint. And let's just grab a few things from in here. So we need our start drawer, which is going to be this. That is start drawer for a normal paint, not an NC paint, but a normal paint, normal non-client paint. And we need our end paint. So let's just bring this in. Bring that in as such. And then what we can do is we just really want to just create a rectangle. Fillet, rect, RC, get client rect. Notice that we're using client rect this time instead of window rect, because we only want the inside of the rectangle this time. RC. Perfect, we've got our client rect. Let's create ourselves a brush at 36, 36, 36, because that's the same as our background. As we are creating a brush, we need to delete a brush. And let's just fill our paint width from that. So what do we call this? We call this RC. So let's say this again. We begin paint, we paint, we end paint, and this is on our on paint. Let's come up here and let's have a look. That one's break. Let's have a look, see what's going on here. There we go, and that seems to be working absolutely fine. What's going on with this? This is still working absolutely fine. And as you can see now, as we resize this window, it seems to be resizing the inside as well. That all seems to be working fine, and this is now our new minimum because we changed it on our minimum and maximum size settings. I'm really quite happy with how this is working. It's doing everything we need it to, and it's also got a couple of extra features, and I think we are in a really good place to start moving forward with our simulation. At the end of this episode, we're left with a brand new, custom designed and modern looking window. There are many other features that we could put into this window, and I'd really like to hear from you guys on your design choices, on what extra things you can think we can put in here, and if there's any fixes you think we could add just to make this experience even better. In the next episode, we're going to be focusing more on XML readers and possibly making a theme file for our program. This will put us in a good stead to be able to start building up a 2D UI manager and also starting to move on to our simulation and our DirectX. Please like and subscribe because it really helps, and feel free to join us if you would like on our Discord and Patreon. With that being said, that's everything from this tutorial. I'd like to wish you the best of luck, and we'll see you next time where we'll be making a C++ DirectX 12 game engine.